Nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to meet you too. I'm really excited to connect with you and dive into everything.
You're so sweet. Thanks. I appreciate it.
I usually start these from like childhood, so I'd love to start there. You grew up in LA, is that right?
I did. I grew up in LA, yeah. Well, like West LA, where I still live. I haven't moved very far. But my yeah, my parents like met in Paris. My mom is French, and then my dad's from Ohio, and they moved to California and never left, and so I've been here.
I spent a little time in LA as a teenager as well. I grew up in Texas, which is where I'm at now, but from like 13 up until my 20s, I was pretty much in LA full time, which
Cool.
is kind of like it's such a unique place to spend like your childhood, being like the heart of the entertainment
Mm,
industry.
hmm.
So I'm curious for you, like what was your kind of introduction into acting and Hollywood in general, and when did you make the decision to like go full force and pursue it as a career?
Well, I just don't know if, like, to be honest, I just wonder if I'd lived anywhere else if I really would have done it. Because, like, as a kid, as just a normal kid, no one in my family ever acted. I didn't even know what that meant. So, like, when you're from LA and you live here, it's just a place like any other place, you know?
Yeah.
And I was so outside of like the Hollywood kind of bubble or what that meant. I mean, we barely even watched like TV growing up, you know? So I didn't really, it's something I could have like planned, certainly. But as a kid, I, uh, I really liked reading, and I was sort of a dreamy, kind of weird little kid. So I sort of like gravitated towards like text and stories. You know, I really liked that kind of stuff ever since I was really little. And then one year in this weird like French school that I went to that didn't have any like extracurriculars, we had like a theater program. And because like I loved like memorization and like dialogue and words, and we were doing The Wizard of Oz, which to me was like one of the five movies I'd ever seen and just loved and knew backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
I ended up doing that play, and they were like scouting for little kids because like this was LA. They're looking for like child actors. And then I ended up like signing with this agent that I stayed with for like 12 years or 15 years after that. And that's kind
Wow.
of how I started acting. Yeah, I know.
What was your
It's weird.
parent? Yeah, yeah. What was your parents?
Uh,
Because my grandpa is an actor as well, Barry Corbin, and he.
yes, I saw. I was watching some of your other
Oh, cool.
interviews and listening. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's so I was in the industry or around it growing up, and was always on set with him and like seeing him rehearse, his lines for a movie he had coming up or whatever. So it was something that kind of felt even in Texas like a normal thing to me as well.
Mm.
That I wonder if I would have found it if I wasn't around that. But I'm curious with your parents, since like neither of them were actors and this whole thing was new to all of you. What was their response or reaction to, you kind of gaining some momentum in this industry at such a young age?
I mean, they were like really proud of their little kid, you know, like, but like they had no idea. They're like, what does this mean? Like, do you, okay, so now you're going to be in movies? Like, how does this work? Like, and I was, God, I was 10 years old or 11 years old, when I started. And so I think they were kind of surprised that I like was so serious about it so quickly and like really applied myself like a small adult, because they had no real frame of reference for what it meant. Um, I think they were very happy that I found something that I really seemed to like take extremely seriously, even as like a little kid, and they appreciated that. But I don't even know what their frame of reference was for it, to be honest. I think they saw like as it went on, like how into it I was, and how like at the expense of everything else, how much it mattered to me.
Yeah.
And so so yeah, I'm lucky I didn't have like the nightmare story of kids who have, like stage parents that are forcing them to do something to like live out their dream. It wasn't that case at all,
Yeah.
which is nice. So I feel lucky for that, but it seems almost accidental.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in a way, like, because I relate to finding acting at a young age. I was 6 when I
Yeah.
first played Tiny Tim in a little community theater production. And
Right.
um, ever since then, it's like, this is what I want to, like, no matter what else happens, like, I'm going to pursue this. And I fell in love with it, which is such a rare thing, I think, finding the thing you're going to do forever at such a young age.
Mm.
Um, and as a parent, I have 3 kids, and
Wow.
yeah, I
You're
know.
so young.
I
Congrats.
had my first at 25. Three's our
Wow.
limit though. We're
Three
my
is a lot.
oldest. Yeah, yeah.
I have three dogs. I'm like, three is way more
Same
than
thing.
two.
Yeah,
Like that's a lot of that's a lot of dogs.
yeah. But my oldest is 9, and she is like, ever since she was 3, has been writing books every single day. She writes at least like 1 to 3 books. That's her thing. She just gets paper, staples it together, and is
Are you
constantly.
serious?
She's
That's
obsessed with it.
so
Yeah,
cool.
it's amazing. And we realized when she was like 4 or 5 that like she was on the spectrum, and that like writing is her special interest, and drawing, and she's incredible at it. Um, and it's one of those things too that like as a parent, I'm so glad she's found her thing, and she may find another thing down the road, but like that she has this thing that she loves,
It's
and
great.
I just want to support that. And like, she isn't like, as long as she gets by on math or whatever else, that's fine. But like, she found the thing that
Math,
yeah,
please.
it's like, yeah, exactly. My mom actually, I homeschooled to like focus more on acting. She gave me the answer books for math because she was like, you're not going to need this anyway. So
Right.
just don't get all the answers right, because then they'll know you cheated. Um, but I was reading what you were saying about your parents, and how they were very, they weren't afraid to have adult conversations with you, and to kind of like level with you at a young age. And I really appreciated that, because I've tried to do the same with my kids. And there's been times where I'm like, oh man, am I being too honest because I don't want to scare them? But then it felt validating to hear you talk about how much you appreciated their openness. So
Hmm.
I'm curious, like, are there any specific like adult conversations you remember as a child that like really stuck out to you, and kind of helped you navigate, life and your career as you got older?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, my dad had my dad was a writer, and like I had a huge love for like art and literature, and like I think I certainly owe like all my acting to him. There's absolutely no chance that I would have had even the taste for books or really love stories or watching movies if it weren't for my dad, and he had really, really great taste in all those things. And I started kind of watching I was gonna say adult movies. You're gonna think my parents are perverts. Not
Yeah,
adult
no,
movies, but movies for adults, right?
yeah,
Like really quite young, and also reading like Shakespeare and the Bible and like all sorts of like serious texts. And so one of the earliest like I don't know, kind of conversations I remember having with my dad about something. He gave me some. God, I wish I knew what it was. I don't know, some kind of erudite sort of like text that like I probably wouldn't understand. And this is right when I started acting. And he would tell me like, "Hey, listen, like read this, and you don't need to really understand it. Just read it and listen to it. Listen to the music of the words. That's all."
wow,
You don't really need to understand what it means. Just maybe if you like it, try to appreciate it for the way that it sounds, almost like music, and you'll figure out the meaning of it later. And so I really carried that with me later, just in terms of like what dialogue sounds like, how to kind of work with the music of words without like killing yourself over the meaning, and how to express every single emotion and just sort of letting it flow.
yeah.
Um, I don't remember your question.
That's no, that's it. That's really beautiful, and I feel so much, like I relate to so much of that too, because the earliest memory I have of going to the movie theater was seeing Saving Private Ryan when I think I was
Yeah.
7 or
I
8.
remember seeing that too, believe it,
Yeah,
and the Thin Red Line, because they were both
yeah,
kind of cut. They came out at the same time,
yeah.
and I'm like a
It's
kid, and I'm like, I fucking love war movies.
same. I was obsessed. My mom saw it before she took me, and she was like, I'll like go a little late so he doesn't see the D-Day scene."
Uh,
And we went to the movie theater, and as she was in line to get popcorn, she turned around, and I had already run off into the movie theater and was watching the D-Day scene. And she came in, and I was like, "You're missing the best part! Like these special effects are amazing." And it's like I'm so grateful, because my grandpa was the same thing, where I grew up watching him die in movies, and like
mm,
being on set with him when he was playing an Irish pimp in a Western that gets shot in the head when I was like 10 years old. And it was amazing.
so
Um,
cool.
and I think that a lot of parents, like kids, have such a capacity for understanding these like adult concepts and themes that we don't really give them credit for. And I'm so grateful to have my mom and my grandpa be so um, unafraid to like kind of just let me experience these things and answer questions, because kids are so curious and like,
Mm.
you want to know, and there's too much of oh, that's just the way it is, or like, because I said so, like that's kind of the go-to answer a lot of parents give, I feel like, because they don't want to have the difficult conversations. And I feel like it's so important to do that. So I'm grateful that your parents did.
That's so sweet. I mean, look, it might have been out of selfishness, probably because my dad didn't want to sit through like kids movies and like just wasn't interested, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but uh, but yeah, it's what's really not. It's like people think that like you have to be like an artist in order to appreciate art, and I think that's such bullshit. Like every kid grows up loving to draw, and then at some point they like stop drawing, right? Or people think you have to be some kind of special human being to be an artist, and like we separate those two worlds so much, you know. And I struggle with that too all the time. I'm like, well, I don't feel particularly special. Like, what makes me an artist and someone not an artist? I'm just like a human being that like does this thing and appreciates this stuff. But like, I don't like having those two worlds separate. And like with kids, I don't know what it's like to have kids or to have the huge, not burden, but big responsibility of being like, I'm going to place down the roadmap of like,
Right.
like, oh God, I hope this, I hope my kid like, can figure out life and also has an appreciation for things, but also it's up to them and, we'll see
Yeah.
what they like. But like, I'm very appreciative of my parents um, for sharing that with me. I just don't know. You have so many distractions, growing up and you're trying to figure out who you are and all that crap. But it's just, there's no space for like art and exploration. Then, you know, if your parents don't like and help you at least a little bit, it's a lot harder to figure that stuff out much later. So
Yeah.
it's nice that like you hope that like for the rest of your life you can live with that hand in hand, no matter what you do. It doesn't matter,
Right.
professionally.
Yeah.
You know.
I couldn't agree more. I want to ask you too about Malcolm, because I grew up. I That was my show. I would steal my grandpa's screeners, like SAG screeners, and watch all the episodes. And then I started recording it. My wife, when we met, that was one of the things we bonded over, was our love for
Really?
Malcolm in the Middle. And actually, when we say Malcolm, we say it in your character's voice,
Oh my
because
god.
we're like such big fans of it. I'm just curious, as a fan, what was that experience like? Kind of being one of your first big introductions into, mainstream Hollywood. What was that whole experience like for you?
I mean, look, it was like one of the only shows that I watched as a kid. I was like so head over heels in love with Frankie. Like I didn't at that age, I was young, I was like 11 or 12.
Yeah,
So I didn't really, I mean, it was a show, it was a job. I'm not crazy, I knew that. But I also felt like it was some kind of like divine intervention, like this was the way my life was going to go. I'm going to meet Frankie, and then we're going to get married, and like
of
that's going to be my
course.
life. That's what this show is for. So there wasn't a big difference between the way Cynthia was and the way I was at that time. But like, yeah, one of my best memories, like I remember, when you're a kid you're like super brave, you're like a lot less afraid. And I remember like the screen test, for that show, right? You've got all these like adult dudes like sitting in a room, like suits, around a huge table, like 25 guys. And your job is just like go in there and make these guys laugh. And like the freedom with which I did it, I really think it was all motivated by the fact that like, God, I need to like get on Frankie's radar. Like he needs to know that I exist because like obviously this is really gonna happen. But yeah, I was kind of a kooky kid. And I didn't that was a wonderful set. What was really cool about that is that, like, Linwood Boomer, the creator of the show, um, like, he was a true, like, captain of the ship, so to speak, and, like, even though this is a show with a lot of kids on it, like, young
Hmm.
actors, like, he was really, like, diligent with, like, all of his child actors and, like, really, like, took this it was like a fun set, but a very serious set.
Yeah.
And, like, again, as a kid, like, I don't know why, how I became such a tough ass, but I loved like people who worked really, really hard to make something great. Like I admired those kinds of people, and that set reflected that. But there are a lot of pictures of me like trying to hug Frankie and him being like, "Get away from me," you know.
That's so funny.
But he's a very nice guy. He's a very nice guy,
Yeah,
and
I'm sure.
yeah, very sweet dude. So yeah, that's a lovely memory. But I still get recognized from that, which is
Really? That's
insane. Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, like on the street, which I'm like, my God, like it's wild. It's just even in
Yeah.
Europe and stuff, like people really
Wow.
remember that show as being like a seminal thing of their childhood.
Yeah, it's like, and I think now because it's on Hulu and I watch it often still. Like whenever I'm just laying in bed about to go to sleep, I have to have something on. So I rotate between Malcolm and The Office. Those are like my two go tos.
That's
Um,
great.
but one of my best friends, he's one of my castmates on The Chosen. He's from Australia, and that's the thing that we bonded over was Malcolm in the Middle as well. And
Mhm.
he said it's huge over there. That like
Yeah,
everyone in his school was obsessed with it when they were kids. So
yeah.
yeah, it's really like stood up, and I'm so excited to hear about the revival that's in the
I
works
know.
too.
I
So
can't wait to see it. It's
yeah,
going to be great.
that's exciting. Speaking of that and like kind of gaining some momentum at a young age, and getting on like one of the biggest shows at the time, how did your peers kind of, was there like a noticeable shift for you in the way people interacted with you or like people at school treated you at all? Because in LA, there is one, so many child actors out there. And then there's kind of like that competitiveness just in general among kids,
Mm, mm.
especially at that age. So did you notice a shift at all? And if so, how were you able to kind of navigate that emotionally?
I mean, I'm sure that it's different for most kids that went to normal schools or like I went to a very weird French school called Lycée Français. So like it was like kind of a school on another planet, like another universe. Like so like I mean it was in LA, so I guess it's got that going for it. But like um there were like a bunch of, you know, like French displaced kids whose families were French, and like we didn't have any extracurriculars. It was all like just academics, and all the classes were in French. So we're kind of like in this weird little bubble. And I mean, I only had like 14 other kids in my grade. So like it wasn't, we didn't know anything about pop culture, and none of us were particularly cool, and especially me, like at all. And so that was never a concern. I could never fit in any way, period. I think acting for me was like, oh, finally I can like stop this like cosplaying of being a like a kid in school, like a student, and like start my life, you know, because
Yeah.
I wasn't like it didn't. I guess the social pressures like didn't really interest me, and it wasn't really the way that my school functioned. You know, like we all wore uniforms, and we, you know, so I guess the French instruction kind of was nice in that sense. Like we weren't, there was no like competition between groups, and if there were, like I wasn't. I didn't fit in anywhere anyway. So it was a small enough environment that like that didn't matter too much. So my friends, the ones that did watch TV, like didn't care, and I was still Tanya, and it just didn't matter. I was still just super weird and drew in class all day and like made jokes. So
Yeah.
it didn't really match them. So I'm grateful for that too. That's actually good because it would suck to like yeah, have to like figure out your place and like being Miss Cool Girl in school and all that.
Yeah.
I'm still haven't figured that out, but like certainly back then I wouldn't have been able to.
Same. Well, I also wanted to ask, it's kind of like a parallel to that, I guess. There's, you hear obviously the horror stories of child actors like being exposed to certain things or um being put in circumstances that are not appropriate for their age. And it is such a weird thing, like being a child that has a job and you're surrounded by all these adults. And like even in theater, I remember hearing like comments or conversations where I'm like, whoa, what are they talking about? That, maybe my 10-year-old mind wasn't ready to be exposed to or whatever it may be. I'm curious for you, do you think your parents being so straightforward with you kind of helped you be able to navigate the, I guess, adultness of the film industry?
But like my parents are pretty normal, you know? And I think the one I started seeing like ridiculous adult behavior as soon as I started acting. Like
Hmm.
that was when, and I guess I was like just mentally, I don't know if mentally prepared. This is the thing, like um I really like weird people. I don't mean it
Same.
as a pejorative, but like I'm not even as a little kid never really interested in like just like boilerplate kind of like socially acceptable behavior, and was always very very drawn to people who were like just a little bit different. And so I think I had like a huge amount of patience for like ridiculous behavior. And once I started acting, I saw, oh, okay, this adult is having a literal meltdown on set in front of everyone and like punching holes in walls. Like, oh, this is interesting. Like, how come 12-year-old me is not like freaking out about this? And I'm not even
Yeah.
going to think about it when I leave set. Like, this is just somebody acting like a child, and I'm going to just endure that because I have 6 pages to do later and I'm thinking about my scene, and that's all I care about. But you can go and be like a giant child. That's fine. Like, it didn't really like kind of affect me. And I don't know if that's because like I'm just like accepting in general, but like I'm very lucky that nothing creepy ever really happened, or at least
Yeah.
that like I think I was like focused enough and weird enough as a kid that like most people didn't really see me as like, oh, I can victimize this kid or like
Right.
manipulate them. I'm lucky in that sense. I don't know if that messed up synapses in my brain later on, like as an adult, like in terms of like what I think is just like tolerable behavior. Like,
Right.
but and I work on that now. Um, but it's a really vibrant, I mean, as you know, right? Like a very it's adult, but it's like vibrant and creative and crazy. And I think when you're young, being exposed to like so many like extraordinary personalities for good or for bad, because of
Yeah.
people who have like real attitude problems, it kind of not only does it force you to grow up, but it shows you like the panoply of like human existence. And like as a kid, that's good. You're not, I think, in my opinion, like sheltered. It
Yeah. Yeah.
wasn't.
You're not just in
It
this
was
echo
all
chamber.
real life stuff, and as you grow up as an adult, perhaps you become a person that's like a little more accepting of everyone and just understands that like life is complicated, that people have trouble sometimes and it can come out in different ways, and that's okay. You can move on. Like
Yeah.
it's a shade of your personality,
Were there
maybe.
any like adult actors that you remember working with as a child that like really stood out to you in terms of like the way that they carried themselves or work that like you were able to kind of look at as
Role
a
models.
positive influence or role model?
I mean, like, to me, like Bryan Cranston on Malcolm was like just the coolest dude.
Yeah.
Like, and so funny, like so funny. Like, do you remember like when you're a kid and like your parent or someone you love, like will just like make you laugh and like just like remembering like being in stitches laughing, dying
Yeah.
laughing. Like, he really was he's just like a lovely person to be around. And like I wonder what it's like for the adults that were on that show, like with kids running around all the time, like they are kind of in that parent role, but he was such a goofy funny guy and so like warm and sweet, that like it was just lovely to be around him. But I've been very lucky. I've been like blessed to like have been a part of things with people who, yeah, who are really wonderful. And for why? Like, who cares? I'm just like some kid. Like, I'm an actor on a show. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, Brian definitely stands out at me, like being young. And then when I was on Lost, which was a couple years later, but Michael Emerson and I became like kind of buddies, and he played my dad on the show, and we kind of started at the same time. And I
Yeah.
had a huge amount of admiration for him, just for his talent and how he carried himself. And it was cool to have like a surrogate dad on that show,
Yeah.
someone like that.
You mentioned, kind of being like a goofy kid and being able to kind of steer clear of some of the maybe inappropriate behavior in Hollywood at that age, which is amazing.
Horrible.
Yeah, I mean,
Some people
horrible,
are awful.
horrible that other, yeah, that like that it exists. But I'm glad that you're able to come out unscathed. But I want to say, or I want to ask, as for any actor, as you kind of transition, if you start as a kid and then transition into adult roles. I have a lot of friends that like my circle of friends in LA at the time when I was out there was like Disney and
Mm,
Nickelodeon kids that
mm,
were, starring in iCarly and Wizards of Waverly
mm,
Place and all this stuff that then had this really difficult like transition period from going from there to more adult roles. And
mm.
some of them, just kind of quit the business and altogether because of their negative experiences. But then for women in particular, once you hit puberty and then
Mm.
society and the industry starts to kind of view you through a different lens, it can present, another set of obstacles. So I'm curious for you, what was there a noticeable shift going from like the child roles to adult roles? And if so, like what were those challenges that you faced?
I mean, that's certainly hard. There's no question. Uh, Also because like life happens so quickly that you're like constantly trying to catch up. I was always like really behind puberty wise, not to make a joke, but like it took me a really long time to like become like an adult woman in some aspects,
Sure.
certainly in terms of like sexuality and stuff like that. And so like I felt like I was like a couple years behind like everybody else in that way. And maybe that's good. You know, maybe that meant that I didn't ask myself too many questions about like, oh God, who is this adult woman? What is this body? You know? I was also like, you know, as a teenager and like young adult, really into like counterculture stuff and like to push people's buttons. And like my dream was to be in like a Harmony Korine movie or like work with Larry Clark. Like I love these guys, Greg Araki, I love these guys.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, well, this is the next logical progression of my career. I can go from Malcolm in the Middle to like super intense, dark indie films. And like, this will be like my life. And, you know, life always goes in different directions. But yeah, there's a lot of pressures to be like a sexy young thing as a woman for sure, like very quickly out of like you're 16 and then all of a sudden you're like this babe, you know? Um, and the impression you have about yourself is never the one that other people have. People view you like quite differently. Uh, so yeah, sexuality is an interesting, especially for female actors. It's a weird thing that has to be dealt with. It was never a topic that I was particularly interested in, to be honest. So I never really racked my brain around it. But you know, there's an awkward period between being a kid and being an adult, and like that, it's kind of in some ways can suck like doing that on camera because you're like you ask yourself a lot of questions like where do I fit? Am I a grown up? How do I you know, yeah, how have I evolved really? Like, but you know, I do think now things have changed like quite a bit. You know, like
Yeah.
sexuality is not like the number one thing on everyone's list, and it certainly isn't maybe the most interesting. And so that's good in a sense.
Yeah. That actually is kind of what I wanted to ask next was, you've been in the industry now for decades,
Long,
and
long
it's
time.
yeah, and it's as someone that's been through it since since you were a child. What growth have you seen in terms of equality for women in the film industry during that time, and like what areas do you still see that need to be improved?
Mm. Uh, you know, I think we still have a long ways to go, to be honest.
Yeah,
But maybe that's also, you know, when you deal with like centuries of being put in like a submissive or less than position, you know, like it's very hard even for yourself to like sort of get over those like genderized roles that everyone has. For anyone who's not a, I don't know. I think sure, I think things have gotten certainly gotten better, you know. I wish that like maybe you know, I think like maybe young people starting to act now are like certainly like have like this like boatload of like confidence and self-worth, which is like even to me still just awesome to
yeah,
witness, you know? And kind of annoying too, because I'm like, who do you think you are? But at the same time, as they should be, you know, because especially if you're gonna do this job, like you have to be like balls to the wall confident or at
yeah,
least unafraid with a huge amount of courage to like surmount a lot of crap in this industry and competition and how difficult it can be and then how the business will change and you're going to have to weather that no matter what and stop complaining about the way things were and just accept the way things are and like you know like life like that's it's really hard you know to endure all that sometimes. I think if anything with the way things are trending at least young people male female non-binary whatever like are it's permissible to have a lot of self-confidence and no matter even if that borderlines on arrogance it's still better than like self-doubt
yeah,
and not believing in yourself and because that all that crap just gets in the way of doing anything
yeah,
and I think that's really nice you know even if that's like a global trend it's good that people are that way because everything else just slows you down I think in a lot
yeah.
of ways
I
you know.
agree, and I feel it's the theme of this podcast is kind of about like finding strength in our perceived weaknesses, and for me, I got into this industry initially like the camaraderie, the community was huge for me. But then also as a way to hide the things that I was insecure about, as a way to kind of put on this mask. And, it was because I didn't have a lot of confidence and it was a way for me to pretend that I'm someone else.
Mm.
And as I've gotten older, especially after becoming a parent, I've been able to kind of like hold up a mirror to myself a little more and examine those parts that I used to think were flaws. And it's now I found so much. It's an empowering feeling being able to like share those and lean on those and be like, proud of those things and slowly learn to love those things about myself. And I'm curious with you, were there any insecurities that you struggled with earlier on that now you're able to look back on and be proud of those qualities that you may have like, you know, been ashamed of, in the past?
Right. I admire you. I think I'm still trying to figure it out. It's
I'm
tough,
still I'm still on the journey too. I'm not
It's
quite there
really
yet, but
tough.
yeah.
I mean, similar, like in like mirroring what you just said. Um, the most exciting thing, if I really think about what is it that I like about acting or have liked always since I was a kid, is the ability to like disappear and be somebody else. Not that anything about my life was hard or I wasn't desiring of like a life that I didn't have, but I loved the chance to escape always since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And so I think as a result, there was a little bit of an identity crisis later on when I realized, okay, now that when I have more time on my hands and I'm not working back to back, like who the fuck am I? And I mean, it was never, I told myself, like, if I can disappear into these people's lives enough times, I never have to ask that question, ever.
Yeah.
And the problem is that, all you've got is you, and at some point you're going to have to contend with all this, and you cannot just you can't disappear behind somebody else's personality, and you're still you, and that's why
Mhm.
people want to cast you. um that's why I think this job could be kind of confusing, and when you have that stamp like ever since you're a kid, it's like really hard to see anything else.
Yeah.
And I don't pity myself, of course, but I just don't. I'm kind of envious of people who seem to be like really well seated in who they are and have an ability to really express like what they like, what they don't like, the kind of person they are, like with no concessions. Like I am
Yeah.
the way I am, and if you don't like it, then you just don't fit in the way I see the world, and that's fine. But this is me.
Yeah.
Who are you when you're the moments that you love the most are the ones in which you can feel something when you're inhabiting the life of somebody else, like, and all of a sudden, like, what are your real memories? Like I feel like in those flow states, like when you're acting, where everything kind of fades away, and you aren't conscious of yourself as a performer, but you just being,
Mhm.
like that's like the most blissful state you can be in as an actor, right?
Yeah.
And like sometimes, like I get confused, like my memories almost become those memories. So
Yeah.
so I think that's in terms of like just struggling with identity. The acting kind of puts its stamp on you in that way, and then who you are outside of it, I've always felt is kind of just like an afterthought. And the problem with that is that then, in terms of self worth, you feel like that's the only thing that defines you, right?
Mhm.
And that's a problem because you don't want to live your life that way. And I'm
Yeah.
sure a lot of actors feel that. I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, I am an Enneagram 3, the achiever, so I'm very much like my self-worth. I'm constantly fighting it, but my self-worth is very much tied to accomplishments and
Yeah, me
achievements.
too. It sucks.
Yeah, it's the
It
worst.
sucks.
Oh yeah, I've been doing so much work in
So how do you
therapy.
deal with it? Oh, therapy. Yeah.
So yeah, therapy, a bunch of different types of therapy. I've been doing EMDR therapy, which is
Mm,
insane and so cool.
mm.
But I've realized that like exactly what you're saying, this kind of identity crisis of being an actor and playing all these different characters and having people tell you, like how your character feels or like, these scripts of like this is what happens. It made it difficult for me as an adult to express what I am actually feeling or even fully
Me
understand
too. We
what
have
I'm
the
actually
same
feeling.
problem.
Yeah. Where there's times where
Totally.
like I'll cry and I'll just be like, am I crying because it's what's expected of me? Am I feeling this? Or am I like,
Right.
and I get in my head about it. And I'm slowly kind of like stripping all of that away and figuring out who I am at my core.
Mm.
But it's a long process and it's been fascinating to kind of, dive into all of that. I'm curious, have you made like you don't have to get into like whether or
That's
not
okay.
you're in therapy or anything. But have you made any realizations through like, just working on yourself as an adult about, who you are and like what you feel, and been able to
Gosh.
separate the art from the artist a bit?
I mean, I, gosh, it's like, it's fun. I'm not to keep harping on the same topic, but like, also just because it's so nice to talk to another actor and like you can totally relate, right?
Yeah.
So it's really strange because the environment of being on a set, the camaraderie you have with other actors within the context of the film, like it's such a, it sounds heady. It's such a heightened. There's so many heightened emotions going on, and the bonds
Yes.
that you create are like are so deep so quickly,
Yeah.
right? That like I'm I'm also like I'm kind of cynical about the business, unfortunately, and I hate that part of myself, but I'm also extremely trusting very quick
Me
with
too.
almost everyone.
Yes.
And that's dangerous sometimes as an adult because like you get into weird things. But like, you know, I like if I when I played like a junkie that's like head over the heels in love with her boyfriend, like I can access those emotions like really, really quickly. And you start to get like a skewed view of like your real true relationships with the people you're working with, right? And in which everything feels so, you feel everything so heavily so quickly so fast, right? These are strangers, and then a week later you're crying, you're talking about your deepest darkest secret, you're
It's like
saying you're admitting
artificial trauma bonding or something.
you're
It's like,
you're admitting things with to people who you don't know within 2 days that you would never even tell your friend that you've known for 15 years. You're like, I don't even know if I've said this to my parents before. Like, I
yeah,
don't even know if I've admitted this to myself. So what is it? what makes you what makes you kind of denude yourself completely to these people? And I think it's because, yeah, you're all in this like really what is it, you're embarking on this insane like insular journey together, and then the movie ends,
yeah,
right? And people kind of disappear or dissipate, and everyone goes on to other projects, and you're like, whoa, like I just lived this intense emotional experience. I miss that feeling. I miss these people. Was that artificial? What was that? And then suddenly you're like, okay, do I replicate that in my real life, or do I just like put my life on hold until I'm on the next project and start the whole thing again? I remember talking with Billy Bob on Goliath, Billy
yeah,
Bob Thornton, and talking about this particular phenomenon and being like, why is it that no one calls each other when these things are done? Why the hell are we like strangers after it's over? And what makes it so? And he said that, well, similarly, that like you live when you meet someone on a set, if it goes well, you live your entire love story within the course of like a month,
oh wow,
which
yeah,
would take someone an entire lifetime, right? In like this hyper accelerated way. And by the end of the film, it's almost as if you've lived your story and that's the end and it's over. And that's why people move on. And I get it. I think that's
yeah.
it. But I think it does something to the nervous system for sure.
Yeah, it does. And I've always been a very like, I've felt insecure about friendships a lot in the past because of that, I think, because
Yeah,
it
me
is
too.
like, and I've gone through that whole thing in my head, like, well, I don't want to be the only one that's like texting and checking
Yeah,
in.
I know. Me too.
And
It sucks.
yeah, but I like on The Chosen that I'm on now, well, season 7 is our last season. So next year we'll do that.
God, my
Um,
God.
which is, yeah, I'm so grateful to be a part of something that's like gone on this long. And from season 1, and I wonder if you've had this problem too. As soon as I was cast and knew that it was like going to be a consistent thing,
Mm,
because the first season it wasn't sure, it was like still crowdfunded and really low budget.
mm,
But then once we kind of started to gain momentum and we're like, oh, cool, we'll be back every year doing this. I knew that we knew all along the plan was 7 seasons, and I was terrified that like of it ending. I all I could do is look ahead and be like, this is going to be over one day, and are like dreading the end of it and worrying about like these relationships that I'm forming ending as well. And now I'm feeling better. Like it's still sad knowing that we're getting close,
right.
but I also have found my kind of like core group, like my cast, certain people, and then outside of the cast too, but like my core group of people that I know that I don't have any doubts that like these are going to be my people forever. But it's still it creeps in sometimes where it's like, well, who am I going to be once this is over? What am I going to be?
Mm,
Like, what am I going to go on to do? Is that something that you still struggle with on a set or on a project? Like the kind of like
sure.
when it ends, because I always go through like a little mini depression. Like I've
Oh
told my wife
yeah.
before, I'm like, hey, we're ending in a couple weeks. Like, get ready for me
Yeah.
to be kind of mopey for a bit.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah. There's definitely like a serious come down
yeah,
period, definitely. But I think that's very common. Again, it's like, you know, I'm not making this comparison, but like, you know, if you're, let's say you're, I don't know, you're in the army or something, and you know, you get sent back, you know, and like you're just like thirsting for that experience again, even when it's traumatic.
yeah,
That's what's funny. Because I've been on some shitty sets, all right, where that have not
right,
been like the most fun. And yet still after it, it's like, yeah, I don't know if it's a Stockholm syndrome thing, but you are sort of like thirsting for that. I think it's kind of like when you're in a bad relationship with someone that somehow,
mhm,
even when it's over, you feel like the aftershocks of it in your subconscious, and you miss that chaos because you feel like you were plugged into something at the very least, you know, like that
yeah,
it mattered. Um, yeah, look, I think that's unfortunately it's the price you pay for, you know, being in having a cool job. That
yeah,
that's just really exciting. It's not always fun, but it certainly leaves a very strong impression. I think that's why so many people want to become actors, why there's so much mysticism around movie making, you know, it's because yeah, there's a lot of I don't know, there's a lot of like mystery and magic involved a little bit in like
yeah,
how these things come together, and you feel it. I'm testament to that. You know,
yeah.
I've witnessed it. You certainly
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I
It's
what you
true.
said about like the kind of like Stockholm syndrome, have I just before doing this, I just got back from the movies from seeing Companion. Have you seen
Mhm.
Companion yet?
No, I heard about it. Mm-mm.
Go see it. Don't read anything else about it. Like
Really? Okay.
just go see it because I think you'll I feel like you'll relate to a lot of like the theme of the like the heart of the movie, what it's really about once it becomes clear because it takes like a third of the movie and then you're like, holy
Okay.
shit, what is this movie? But yeah, go see it. It's
Cool.
really, really good. But I
I
want
just
to,
saw the Bob Dylan movie. I thought it was
I still need to see
fantastic.
that. Yeah.
So
I love
great.
everyone in it. So and I love Bob Dylan too. So,
It was,
um,
I hadn't listened to like a Bob Dylan record in so long. Like, and I
yeah,
just forgot how many bangers this guy has and
dude.
how he'd written like all of it. I mean, his entire, he made like 55 albums at this point,
Yeah.
but like his biggest hits were like between the age of like 20 and 23. I mean, it's
It's
out of
insane.
control.
Yeah. It's crazy.
So it's so well made. It's really I think it's like my favorite movie
I
of
can't.
last year.
Yeah.
It's or this year. Fantastic.
I want to ask about your like current projects and anything upcoming that you want to promote before I get to the final question.
Okay. Well, you know, I've been writing a lot lately. So I directed a movie in 2019 that was like a satire about the art world, and went to a couple festivals. And ever since I was a little kid, like even, well, not kid, but 15, 16, I started directing little things like shorts and music videos, and always really, really loved that. Like the marriage of writing a script and also just being on set since so young, like trying to see like what everybody's job was, and just witnessing a lot of great directors and writers like collaborating. And I really like the collaborative aspect outside of just being an actress and showing up for your role. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of like comedy, and I wrote like a kind of half-hour comedy TV show based on my life. I got a DUI a couple years ago and had to do community service, delivering meals to seniors in LA. And I did it for like 6 months, and I wrote a show about it. So I'm working on that now. Um,
That's
and
amazing. I just want to
yeah,
share in the spirit of sharing embarrassing stories. I got a
yes,
DUI when I was 18
okay.
and had to do community service as well and
What did
do
you
an
do?
alcohol. I worked at this donation place where I just had
Okay,
to sort like furniture and stuff that people were donating.
cool.
And I had to do an alcohol awareness class and
Right.
but yeah, it was so I you're not alone in that. Anyway, sorry, continue.
No, not at all. So it's kind of mostly about this friendship that developed between these two girls that are in the program. One that's been in for like 5 years, or has like many hours of community service under her belt, and another girl that's like there for her first day. But it's also kind of about the relationships that these young people have with the seniors that they deliver meals to, and it's sort of yeah, and the community center where they work, and it's kind of also about like getting older in Los Angeles and like what people who are like in need, like social services programs aren't really leave a lot to be desired, especially like in this country. And so it kind of examines that, but it's mostly like sort of just like a like screwball comedy that like tackles some issues, I suppose, but based on what I went through, because some of the people I met in that program, like truly like some of the nuttiest old people I've ever met in my life, and like I will never forget what I went through. So
Yeah.
that was sort of the inspiration behind that.
I
And then
love that.
yeah, and then in terms of acting, I did a couple episodes of the show Lincoln Lawyer last year, so it may continue in this next season, hopefully. And then I mean, yeah, we'll just see. Again, like you said, like you never really know kind of what is next. I'd love to work more in Europe. I speak French. My mom's French, so there's another film I may do at the end of next year, and I'd love to even write something and film something out there. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to
Yeah,
next.
that's exciting. I want to end on a the same question that I ask all of my guests at the end. And since the theme is all about learning to like embrace our perceived weaknesses and love the things that make us different, I want to ask you, what is the thing that you love most about yourself?
Um, Gosh, I uh I think I'm pretty funny. It's so horrible to
I
say that
agree,
about
though.
yourself,
No,
but and so I also like I'm so admiring of people who really have a great sense of humor. Like that is truly like I think it just makes everything that's hard in life like a little bit less hard. And I like seeing like the more absurd, funny side of things. It just makes dealing with stuff like a lot easier. And I love to constantly remind myself that things are not that serious. You can find like a funny way of looking at things. So I like making people laugh, or at least I love being around people that make me laugh. So I suppose but there's it's so tough because there's so many things about myself that I find annoying. But like, you just gotta, I think at this stage, we realize that like at this point, this is what we've got,
yeah,
and, and you don't need to be conscious of the way that you are. You don't need to manicure it as much, maybe. And people are going to project their idea of what they think you should be onto you, and that's other people's problem.
yeah,
And you have to have enough courage to just live life fully, with some sense of fun and not worry about what's going on so much.
yeah.
I don't know if that might not be very good advice, but
No, I think that's great advice,
you're
and
like, if
I
it
no, I
works
love
for you.
no, no, it clearly is, and I think that that's it's easier said than done, obviously, at times, like being
Yeah.
able to kind of separate that. But I mean, that just the effort to try and to like, I think I'm definitely way further than I was 10 years ago, but I'm not anywhere near where I want to be in terms of my self-acceptance and everything. But that's part of the fun is like learning more about yourself in it and learning to accept yourself more every day. And I think it's awesome that you're doing that. And I'm such a fan of your work. I'm so glad that we've
You're so sweet.
connected. And I
Thanks.
hope that
And
we
I'm
cross
happy to meet
paths
you.
on something
Me
soon.
too. Where do you live in Austin?
In Dallas or near Dallas.
I have one friend who moved, well, he's from Austin. I think he lives there still. His name is Marshall Allman, fantastic actor that I worked
Sounds
with a couple
familiar.
times. And him and his wife, I think they live in Austin. He's from there. But who else do I know who lives out there? Oh yeah, I was in this bonkers, weird ass Sundance movie with an actor that I still think is to this. I mean, I know is like the most talented actor I've ever worked with. One of them. His name's Vince Viloff, but we were in a movie together, and he also lives, I think, in Austin. Maybe I should come to Texas and
Yeah,
see my friends.
do it. Yeah, if you do, let me know, and it'd be
Yeah,
awesome
for
to
sure.
get together.
I'd
Um,
love to.
it was so nice talking to you, and I
It's nice to
appreciate
meet
it.
you.
And let's stay in
Thank
touch.
you. Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks so much.